Hey team, this week we talked to Dr. Alia Bojilova, who is one of the most impressive guests we've had on the podcast.
Yeah, she moved to New Zealand from Bulgaria at the age of 17, and when she arrived here, she didn't speak a word of English.
She's also the wife of Jamie Pennell, who was the former SAS soldier, which was one of our most popular episodes last year. She might be more badass than him.
Yeah, the main part of this episode is the incredible story of when she was working for the UN. She was taken hostage in Syria and negotiated her way out.
Incredible story. You'll love this one. This episode was brought to you by TAB. Download the new app today and get your bet on. Alia Bojilova, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're very excited to have you, but I'll be honest, a little bit intimidating preparing for a chat with the former lead psychologist of the SAS, among other things. But I wanted to start by asking you where your head goes in this situation. Like, have you thought about all the different things we might ask? Jamie Pennell, your husband, told us you've always got a plan. Have you got a plan for today?
I mean, I pretend to Jamie that I always have a plan. Obviously, I'm going to tell him that. To be fair, I was thinking about it on the way here. Biased as I am, I think this is the most important thing for us to talk about. This being resilience, human potential, because it's the thing that matters before the thing that matters. Do you know what I mean? Virtually in every context I'm in, the stuff that holds us back from achieving what matters most, from unleashing our potential, from connecting with other people, traversing all these complex terrains that we all committed to, it requires this conversation. So as you know, when I was emailing last night with my 1,000 ideas of what we need to talk about, I was like, what's left in the universe not to discuss? Do you know what I mean? It's just, so you can't prepare, can you?
No.
Yeah.
You can. You must have some
Did
idea.
you want me to prepare?
You must have some idea of the path that you might want to take.
Yeah.
Despite our best intentions, maybe to navigate into other areas.
I really want to, my dream is that we focus on better. How can we be better? And it's that simple thing, Jamie also talks about it. How do we think better, feel better, act better, so that we do better? And there's just no place you can turn your head to that doesn't deserve that kind of attention. But what I'm observing constantly, and it just drives me nuts and excites me at the same time, is that porous identity that many of us have developed, that thing that absorbs factors that are irrelevant, and also the spillage of potential. So can we talk about better?
We can try.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about better. We're going to talk about a lot. I think the hardest thing in sort of figuring out the structure of this episode is what to leave out, because there are so many different avenues and areas we can pursue. But I wanted to start. You actually have the honour of completing the first husband and wife team to feature on our show. And this is a big call, but you may just be the most fascinating couple in New Zealand, in my eyes anyway. So to set the platform for listeners who aren't aware, Alia is married to Jamie Pennell, who we had on the show in August. And Jamie is an esteemed 20-year career as a soldier and leader inside the New Zealand SAS, where he was awarded the country's second highest military honour for his bravery. And if it's okay, I hoped we could start by talking about your relationship with Jamie, because initially when I heard you were a couple, the story playing out in my head was soldier falls in love with his psychologist, but and that would be a hell of a storyline, but that's not how it happened, is it?
He even went fishing for it with Jamie yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah. He was like,
what was the relationship?
How does that work?
Imagine trying to be Jamie's psychologist. That'll just be a disaster, wouldn't it? It's like a giant brick wall with deep feelings behind it. No, No, I wasn't. I was a nuisance for him more when we were working together. I was a nuisance. I was someone who was stuffing up his training plans all the time with really abundant questions that had no bearing on his perfect military precision plan. So, yeah.
So you were sort of friends, and then it sort of developed later after you'd left your respective positions. There was no sort of overlapping.
I love you tiptoeing around it. I like it.
There was no overlapping of, positions within the military?
He was still in his respective position. I changed to a more different position when we became a couple. The curious part is our mentor knew that we were a perfect match. I wouldn't have seen it. The way in which we fell into our relationship was quite random. I don't think it was a perfect plan by any stretch of the imagination, but it transpired.
Did it involve a tandem skydive?
It did. Did he tell you about it?
He said that sealed the deal in the relationship, a tandem skydive, which I thought was just the perfect representation of what I thought you guys would do on a date.
I mean, it also nearly broke the relationship because the first thing Jamie did after we did the tandem skydive, he'd ask somebody to produce photos of it, right? It's a typical situation. But apparently my positioning, my body position wasn't right for it. So the first thing that Jamie went to is not how did you feel? How do we deepen our loving connection? But did you see where your feet went? I'm like, dude, just chill. Like, obviously, for someone like me, but like minor detail. My feet were straight. They were supposed to be bent somehow. I don't know, you know? So nearly broke it. But it's every one of these situations that nearly breaks a relationship also makes it quite solid.
In Jamie's book and in his chat with us, he spoke a lot about how hard it was, his transition from soldier to civilian. And you're obviously with him through that part of his journey. But you're also a trained psychologist and you're also his wife. Like, how do you blur the lines? Like, are you actively helping him deal with that, or is it too hard to be both?
It's awful. It's actually awful. And I think it's in any relationship like this, firstly, you can't see the truth. You can't see the complete picture because you don't have objectivity, right? Every one of these micro moments of the spikes, the darkness, the kind of the really complex terrains that he was traveling through at the time, obviously that links to my own emotions, our experience of what life could be like, right? And so you begin to cast plans and make predictions, and it's impossible to be both. Obviously, Jamie wouldn't listen to a word of what I had to say, you know? Yeah. We went and saw this incredible psychologist at one stage who basically said there's no PTSD involved. And for Jamie, that's it. There's no issues. My worldview is true and complete. And so we had this period of time of trying to work out what is the right way of feeling and thinking about this one moment in time, you know? So it's a really complex thing. You can't be both.
Is that a challenge of the job, even in like your friendships with your personal friends, that you have this incredible skill set and you have everyday interactions like we all do, but to park some of that and not analyze your friends, or does it, where does that even sit?
See, with the rest of my tribe, I have no idea where the line is. And most of them are just not, they're so used to me not trying to fix stuff with them. They just bitch about stuff, you know? Which is the best way to be treated if you are a geek like myself, you know? So, yeah. Imagine sharing your feelings with someone you trust and them saying, now, here's a model for you to process your trauma. No, horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Right. Is it? That's really interesting, because the short conclusion I would have is that would just be a natural part of it, but I guess not.
Over time, there's been a few relationships, I think, that I've had to step away from over time because I felt I was creating this mop-up situation, you know, that kind of entanglement where, you know, you care so deeply and you desperately want to help somebody and you try to provide all the nudges and all the clues along the way that I knew about. And it's not, you don't know the holistic human experience ever, but people listen to you differently if you know the professional support system. You're their mate. And so it's agonizing sometimes when you see repeated negative narratives in people who you deeply care about and you know you have no permission to step into it with the exact tools you need.
Yeah.
So it sucks.
Yeah,
you know?
Shit, I bet. Because we had that throughout friendship, but he was able to wade in and talk about the negative behaviours. And I listened. But yeah, with the professional lens on, I'm sorry, I've derailed the stuff.
No, but there would be opportunities for you to do that with someone who is willing, right? It would depend on the friend and whether they're open to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like, what is the issue? Should we go there? Tell us everything.
No, that's on our business channel. I read that you and Jamie used to consult together. I'm not sure if you still do. But what was the dynamic like there? Like, what complementary skills did you bring in and who did you help?
I mean, I think these are some of my best experiences, actually, stepping out and working with Jamie. Because for the first time, I could see the stuff that he knew, not just because of what he's learned and been exposed to, but how he made sense of things that are seemingly distinct, you know, the way in which he connects different pieces of information. And most importantly, how he has this capacity to sustain clarity, even in situations that are really ambiguous, right? And so I loved working with him. We stepped out and started working with New Zealand Olympics, and we had a couple of stints with League, which was just extraordinary. I loved it. But the way in which we would complement this, my thing would be the soft stuff, the conceptual stuff, the big picture stuff, and Jamie will bring it down to something that is applicable, pragmatic, and translatable to the wider audiences. So stuff of magic.
Really. Yeah, that sounds really powerful.
Yeah, and also very annoying. Like, honestly, I mean, this is the nice political spiel, but the truth is it sucks working with someone who has such capacity to see minor detail that can trip you up. And there's no compromise. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to do it, just do it 110%. I'm like, why? 50 is okay. No, obviously it's, a journey.
His attention to minor detail is like unlike anything that I've ever seen. His retelling of the 2011 Intercontinental Hotel siege, word for word, like he's replaying it in his mind, was just incredible. And the response to the episode, go back and listen to it if you haven't already after this. It's really, really special. But I was speaking to Jamie, he sort of spoke about how your lives are a little bit like planes in the night at times, with Sue's such full-on heavy schedules and you're traveling a lot. Is it hard to find time together?
100%. And they literally have been planes in the night. I think it was the other day. It was just Wellington. I was going to Wellington. Jamie was flying out of Wellington, quite literally flying over, each other's flight paths. It is incredibly challenging, and it's taken us yonks to accept that is just the way the cookie crumbles. And the good old saying, it is what it is. It matters a lot. I think for both of us, our capacity to contribute through the things we've chosen matters a lot. And there's a big chunk for this to unlearn. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme. It doesn't have to be with this intensity of commitment that we've become accustomed to. But yeah, it's virtually impossible. I think a few weeks back, we hadn't seen each other. We literally had not seen each other for 3 weeks, and we were in the same country,
Wow.
But our relationship started like that. Our first 6 months of relationship was when I was here and Jamie was in Afghanistan, So, yeah.
I hope this doesn't go too far, but I had been thinking about your son, Alex. How old is Alex?
9.
9. And this was before we even started researching you. I was thinking, what a weapon of a kid he's going to turn into with parents like you and Jamie. Because, wow. But at what age is he going to realize what his parents have done and the scope of the lives they've lived? And, do you think about that?
I don't think it matters. I mean, do you know what I mean? I don't think either Jamie or I think we've done much, to be fair. Do you know what I mean? I think both of us keep saying this thing of only just begun. Like when you imagine how much there is to be done, not just imagine it, but see it and witness it, there's just no space for anything other than humility and restlessness, and so poor Alex sees that and he's just chills. It's also like, what I love about it is how many of these things are completely irrelevant in his scheme of understanding of life. He lives on a farm, runs around on his undies, climbs trees, falls off trees, worries about his sheep in a paddock. And it's like none of that stuff really connects with these components in his life. So we do annoy him. I think he stops us when we're trying to kind of do that unrelenting pursuit of excellence stuff. It's like, chill. No. So yeah, who knows?
Was it hard transitioning from sort of a high-flying, I think, a military career at the time, and decision to have Alex and then step away? And then from what Jamie was saying, it was a difficult period. You were sort of isolated on a 4-hectare property up the back of Clevedon.
Yeah.
And you're learning to be a mum for the first time, which is so different to, I imagine, the world that you had been in. Was that a really difficult time?
I mean, I thought I'd know better, but looking back, I can't believe how ill-prepared I was for what was to come. When Alex was born, it felt a no-brainer to step away from all that. Do you know what I mean? It felt, I know it's not, everyone has their own feelings about children and their own child, and connections are really unique. But in my case, it just felt like there's nothing in the world that mattered more, right? And then time started going, and it went really slow. And I remember I was sitting in our house outside, having just put the washing out on the line, staring at it going, what is the point of all this? Do you know what I mean? Like this vacuum, this endless thing of nothingness. So it felt really heavy and really complicated at the time. My family were in Christchurch. I didn't feel like many of my friends deserved to be burdened with my stuff. And I didn't even know what my stuff was. And Jamie was away just not just preparing for the next stage of his career. And his mind, I only realized that in retrospect, he felt guilt. And it's just all that messiness that happens when you don't know what you're experiencing. If you do, you don't know how to communicate it. And the matching of energy and timing is just not there, So you just have these two, grumpy creatures cruising around Clevedon, not knowing what's going on. It was really, really complicated. Because, if you think about if you are kind of a rabbit on treadmill, right? You have so much energy, so much focus, so much dedication to discover more, learn more. I think the thing that got me was I've always been an endless, unrelenting geek. Like I can't stop researching my stuff, right? And this is the first time when my brain was completely like, nothing, radio silence for months, So it's just, becoming accustomed to a new identity and allowing yourself to discuss with yourself what this new environment, what this new life that you're shaping is going to look like is a big undertaking. And most of us just cruise on in without a thought, So
I think a lot of people will take a lot of heart from hearing you say that, because objectively looking at who you are and what you've done in the area that you work in, for you to make that realization and verbalize it as well is really powerful, very high self-awareness. And I know self-awareness will probably come later on in the conversation, but making sense of it when you're in that situation and then unpacking it later on is super powerful.
Isn't it weird? Because we all have it. We're bombarded with all these labels and these recommendations and ideas about how you should be in these different moments in time. But until you feel it, it makes no sense. And when you feel it, it never translates fully across the book, right? And so that's the stuff I think we have to pay attention to, is actually being able to notice these moments and be really aware of what it is that you need. Now, in fairness, at the time, my mind was so set on being able to absorb and handle and just be glamorous and glorious with what I did and just demonstrating the ultimate example of being unfazed by it all. That's another one of those things many of us do, right? It's just water off the duck bag. It doesn't work. So it's a massive learning.
Is there added pressure because of who you are and what you do to have it all figured out? Did you feel that inside yourself, that their outside perception, like she talks about, is that you kind of know all the answers and you know what to do?
Do you know what I find now when I look back? It's more of a habit rather than an expectation. I don't know if the world expected me to be anyway. If they have, I've missed it. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of being a Johnny-come-lately in New Zealand. You rock up with your backpack and you start a new life. No one expects much. But I think it's just the habit of being a particular way that got me. I've apologized to a number of these women sometime later, but I don't know if you guys know blanket clubs, right? And so I think I'd been in the bush by myself, just being like this crazy creature for 6 months. And then I found out there is a blanket group down in Clevedon. And I realized then that I had this dread of vulnerable women everywhere. And I just had this horrible thought that I was just going to sit in a room with all these women who are complaining about stuff rather than finding ways to be better, grow. And then I had to go, just chill, think things through, Firstly, starting off with that expectation of I'm going to be exposed to vulnerability when I can't process it or absorb it. And then that's the norm. I had that horrible thought of, have I just completely separated myself from the normal world where people are allowed to communicate what they feel and state what they need. And so that blanket experience was a huge flag for me that I've just completely, decided to become a combat Barbie at some point and forgotten that this is not what life is about, Yeah.
We put a lot of thought into how to structure the chat today. And there's one big sort of headline grabbing part of your story that we want to talk about first. And then we can relate it to your lessons in the Resilience Toolkit, sort of back to it. But I'm talking about the time in May 2013 when you were taken hostage with 2 of your team members in Syria. But before we get into it, I wanted to talk about talking about it, because it comes up in every interview you do. But do you find you protect yourself when you tell the story?
I mean, there's maybe I think I try to protect the fact that there are other people involved in the same situation. And that's the most amazing thing about it, is every single one of us did have a different experience by virtue of tiny little differences between the way in which we conducted ourselves. And whilst we were together, we did observe different slithers of reality, which gave us different ways of engaging with what was ahead of us. And the consequences of those things led to different experience after the event. But also I think, again, I was talking to Jamie about it because apparently I make it sound small. And I make it sound small because I can imagine significant number of people around the world are experiencing much greater challenges for significantly longer period of time. Obviously, I shouldn't be thinking that because that was an extreme event. And the second layer to it is when we were in this experience, now you can think me mad and you'll probably be right, but all I could think about is, wow, okay, all these science pieces that I've been studying about actually do work. They do matter. So my restlessness initially was, let's just learn from this thing. Let's just, here are the facts, quick and easy over it. And let's go into proving and disproving components of science so that we can become so much better, so much faster, you know? So it's kind of that restlessness that probably I'm trying to protect the sense making.
Yeah. And I got that perception when I've heard you talk about it. I think I agree with Jamie. It kind of sometimes does come across as small, but it's this incredibly powerful story, and the Resilience Toolkit, you know, the way that you sort of navigated and got through it, which I think will resonate really strongly with listeners. So I would love to talk about it in as much or as little detail as you want, but would you be able to set the scene and sort of take us through it?
Sure. So one of my best deployments with the New Zealand Defence Force was this deployment called UNSO, Mission United Nations Truth Supervision Organization mission. And it's a mission that is staged across 5 countries. So Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt. And what am I missing? Israel. Key, right? So you go to Jerusalem, you get trained, you get clumped into a group of, you know, your new team of observers. Every one of them is from different country by design, because you want to be able to have teams that are multicultural so that you can report on things that you witness from an unbiased perspective. The whole mission is unarmed, which means you traverse these complex areas by just with the power of your gob, you know, like, and so your job is to observe and report on peace agreements between these different countries. I went there and I was selected to serve in Syria, which was a huge gift because I thought, what a place to contribute. 2012, 2013, like you can imagine, a lot of stuff was happening. And it was from the very start, a quick wake-up call, right? The reality that doesn't look very glamorous or flash or confronting, but you know is just thumping with risk. So from day one, by that stage, 2013, we were navigating streets that were peppered with vehicle-borne IEDs. We would be patrolling from the start of this mission. Some areas were really friendly. In some areas, you literally would drive with your, you know, UN vehicle, your armored vehicle, in your tidy little uniform with your badge on, and people would be doing this, you know, sign, because we've been there for 3 generations, and the United Nations was perceived as being impotent, which was probably true in some areas, right? So the event that you're referring to happened in May 2013. And the irony behind this particular event is that by that stage, the risk in areas like Damascus, where our headquarters was based, was too significant for us to keep observers in. So everyone was pushed out to the Golan Heights. And the idea there was that we would be safe. Nothing would be happening to us because you have technical fence leading to Israel. And on a good day, you'd rock on in with your armored vehicle and your badge on, and the gate will open and you'll be like, party, you know, but the gate was shut permanently for the longest of time.
So a technical fence, is that like a fortified?
Yeah.
With like, so like, break it down in terms of fence, bad guys on one side of the fence, good guys on one side of the fence. Is that kind of how simple we get to?
I think it's Israel on one side of the fence,
okay,
others on the other.
Okay.
You know, and so Syria was on one side of the fence, and that's a technical fence is basically a heavily electrified fence that, you know, a bird cannot fly over. That was the phrase, right? You don't want to climb over it, obviously. It goes on for miles, and it's observed within a millimeter, right? So it basically stops people from crossing over.
Yeah.
Creeping into.
But still unarmed. Is that the
for
key?
us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The key for the United Nations is always unarmed, right? In those observation situations. That's
it. You don't want to escalate risk, right? So if you rock up with weapons and you are stepping into an agitated space, it just changes things. That was the premise. But that observation post we were in before the incident you're referring to, it was considered one of the safe remaining. We had begun our deployment at an observation post between the border of Jordan and Israel, in Syria still. beautiful, beautiful area next to a village called Al Jamla, stunning space. And we were stuck there for 38 hours, a couple of months prior, because we were stuck on crossfire between the rebels and the Syrian army. And so we got stuck in this place. The place was completely obliterated. We were in a 1960s shelter for that entire period of time. And so by May, the 2 remaining positions that were considered safe were just perched up as close as possible to the technical fence, the gate. And in May 2013, in the middle of the night, myself and 2 of my colleagues were taken hostage, unarmed, by over 38 heavily armed militia members. When they took us, they stated that they wanted to make a bad video of us. And videos of decapitation, you've heard me say, were commonly used between warring parties to communicate commitment to the mission. By that stage, we'd also spent a lot of time observing similar patterns of behavior of similar groups. We knew who they were comprised of, and we knew that they were very committed to the stuff they said they'll do. And again, I'm not going to skip the detail, but obviously we are here chatting. The probability of us stepping out was not high. Serendipitously, the Israelis had a observation post because they were observing us, observing the peace between Israel and Syria. You know, they weren't trusting us much. And they knew what was happening to us. They could see people creeping up to the observation post, but couldn't communicate with us because we had, you know, agreement of disengagement. We couldn't communicate directly with them. At the time, they had all these amazing plans where they wanted to do what they call surgical extraction, you know, drop a few people in, pull us out of there, obliterate the baddies. But if that happened, we would have been the reason to violate the agreement of disengagement. You don't want to be, you don't want to be that guy, you know? The other thing that was really peculiar about our situation is we knew that we were sitting ducks. We knew that we were watching us being watched by others, you know? And so there was in a far distance, there was a lighthouse that had been abandoned for some time. But in the preceding weeks, there was a light at night. We'd observed movement. We reported that there was an activity in the area beneath us. These observation posts are surreal. Like they're just this beautiful little concrete things. I mean, not that beautiful of a concrete thing, but it's perched on this beautiful vista location, this top of a hill, and you observe everything around you. But around us, day and night, there was constant fight, crossfires. This was a really critical area for the Syrian armed forces to obtain and hold. And so it was a blaze constantly, constant bombardment, constant shelling, just plummeted, you know. So the point of that is we couldn't be extracted by UN because if we asked for help, they would have had to commit troops to come and plug us in through the areas that were on fire. So we just had to follow instructions of our captors and walk our way out of our observation post.
You've got your hand ready for a question. So do I.
So you've broken that down really, really well for us to understand. But I'm assuming when is this happening in real time as you are following the militia? Like you are going through the scenario, like the checkbox of scenarios of going, okay, we're in the shit here now because this, the factors that you've just outlined. Like, is that a real-time processing for you?
Do you know what was crazy? There were so many, you know, when you have these moments where there are 5 or 6 different things that are happening in real time and they happen all in different places, all at the same time. So what was happening in real time from the start is, and this is the weird bit, right? I remember waking up at, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. I have to check actually what time that was. But I remember thinking to myself, foxes are barking. Because we had a lot of foxes in the area. Like it was like, why are foxes barking? And you just go back to sleep, you know, foxes are barking. So the way in which our areas were basically staged is you've got 2 bedrooms in this container and someone is constantly on duty, right? Just to observe and to signal if something is presenting significant risk. And so I was thinking foxes are barking, but wait, are foxes barking? What the frick? Why? Why are foxes barking? And then at the same time, I could hear my mate, Miko, going, Mayday, 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 you know, and he was starting to basically signal that people were creeping in. What was weird about the situation is Miko didn't have line of sight to notice how many people were actually in the observation post. And as I'm still kind of processing that whole foxes are barking situation, hearing him going, Mayday, Mayday, I'm like, is there foxes? What is it? I lifted there were blinders on my window. And I could see a whole crowd of men in our observation post already. And so very quickly, Mika was describing what was going on. The OPI had been breached. Now, the unique part about this situation is in 40-odd years of the United Nations being in this particular area as a military observing force, we had UN military observers had been killed. They had been picked up from patrol, so snatched on the road. All sorts of things had happened, but the UN position had not been breached before. And that was a significant sign, that whatever it is that we are doing, that kind of sacred thing we thought we were serving under, no longer mattered. And you could kind of, if you observe the reality of what was going on in Syria, you could kind of see why. You know what I mean? Like, we had fuel, we had vehicles, we had access to all this freedom, observing and reporting on people who are suffering in their minds, doing nothing to minimize their pain.
In that first minute or two, when you do realize what's happening, was there fear? Was there real fear for your life initially? And then was it trying to figure out how to, straight away trying to figure out how you can create some hope?
I mean, maybe I don't think it's training. But the first thing I remember is the surging, that feeling when the near miss thing, the surging blood to your nose. You're not punched, but just that surge of fear kicks in. But because so many things were changing, the first thing I remember observing is there is a component I could grab hold of. I could start making sense of this thing. So the sense-making thing that you get conditioned to do perhaps is what saved us. Because in the minute, in a microsecond, you could notice something that you can engage with, and it becomes a bit of a mind game, right? It was too busy to be afraid, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? And I'm sure it's completely justifiable to absolutely blanket, and just play dead. But there were too many dynamic pieces to, I think the FOMO was kicking in.
And what did you engage? Was it the eyes? Was it the eyes of the sort of captors that you made the initial contact with?
The really awesome piece about our situation was, so there were a few other steps that kind of led us to thinking we have to take some control over this predicament. And one thing we had already observed for the longest of time is different rebel groups, as well as some of the Syrian armed forces soldiers, were just not particularly well trained. They did not have appropriate weapon appreciation. So I'll give you a clue. As I was listening to the Mayday call that Mika was making, putting my uniform on, the windows next door to what would have been his bedroom were being smashed, right? So you kind of know that there's no point, tinkering around the peripheries. These guys meant business, right? And I put myself out to see who's outside the window, and I noticed that crowd that I was observing creeping into our fence already lined up. And in front of us, a number of them were masked. A number of them looked like they meant business, but there was a dude with a long beard, that kindest eyes, that just looked like one of the teachers from a village. And I was like, why are you here? Do you know what I mean? Like, you get all these like random pieces. So he was put up there as our interpreter, I guess, just in case we couldn't communicate with them. And you could see in him fear, concern, and care. And I was like, you just get these like random clues in this mix going, this is just not a well piece to get a picture.
You can see that in him just by his mannerisms, the way he's moving and acting?
Like in his eyes, in his eyes and his disposition. I mean, it's a very easy contrast to make. You have a few people who just look like they're about to tackle the wall, which was easy because it's a container building. And you had him who just looked like he just didn't belong. He didn't fit in. And then you're immediately thinking, has he been forced to be here? Is he the only guy that they could snatch on the way that could make sense of it? What's in it for him? And so the minute you notice these incongruencies, it kind of gives you a sense that there are gaps. There are gaps in here, The next minute, I think we were trying to negotiate and kind of buy time, and I was trying to communicate with them and just ask them what the intent was so we can maybe find a solution that fits everybody. And then we had a guy with RPG at the door, which is a bit of an overkill because the door was like this. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, and we knew, like, you don't pick up an RPG and like your target is less than a meter. We're like, what are you doing? That's stupid. It's gonna do the harm to the neighbors.
Yeah. In plain language, that's a bazooka, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Like just borrowed from the Russians back in the 60s, It's just
he's compensating. He's compensating.
Yeah.
You describe it very calm and matter of factly, but you've a little clue there was the windows being smashed in the container. So is it also a flurry of activity? And it's like, and I don't want to make light of it, but you know that scene in Taken when have you seen the movie Taken?
I haven't seen it. Should I see it?
It's a good movie, but it might be triggering. But the guy's daughter basically is about to be abducted, and he's on the phone.
Oh yes, I have seen it.
Yeah, and
yes.
he's like, describe everything for me that you see. Like, you're going to be taken in a minute. Describe everything that you see. But is it as quick as that you're having to do all these assessments while this stuff is happening?
Yeah, I think so.
Man,
I mean, is this the line of "you don't know me"?
Well, yeah. Well, I also
sound
wrote
like
that
that.
down because there's a weird dynamic in there where in the back of your mind you do know someone who has a very particular set of skills in your immediate network. And again, I'm borrowing from the movie of you two in the Force falling in love. But did any part of your brain go, Jamie's going to black ops here and come in and surgically remove us?
I think he would have been desperate to do it. And you know, like when we came back months later, like in New Zealand, the first response I got, it was a random thing that we did. We went back to the team in camp, the SAS team, and every man and his dog that came to see me was like, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous.
I wondered that.
You know, it's crazy, right?
Well, yes, it is. Especially as we're going to get you back into the story where you've just been taken.
Yeah. I mean, do you know, okay, in all fairness, I had every faith that my husband, if he had to become involved, would wait for the right time. And that's just wait. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was having a snooze, getting ready for another day of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu the next day. Yeah. But there was a moment in time where I actually thought, shit, is he going to criticize my drill? You know, is he going to think that, like, am I conducting myself in the ultimate way possible? Because I don't want that guy to be nagging me or not getting it.
have something
I gotta
over
be
me.
the dude here, you know?
But I was wondering, do you train for that situation?
Yeah, we do. I mean, conduct after capture is something that you have to have. Weirdly, I actually thought that this was a training exercise, maybe because I'm just an optimistic energizer bunny, maybe because I was half asleep. But initial stages of it looked like a training exercise. And one of the things that probably stopped me from freaking out too early was actually going, are the UN going to run that scale of a training exercise? That's complicated. That's proper. You know, but we had just been in Australia running this just before I deployed, this enormous course that is specifically designed for UN observers going into high-risk zones, right? And a big chunk of it was being snatched, being taken. And you could see relatively quickly that the game is on, but all it takes is one person to react in a way that is triggering or that shows that they're experiencing fear for the whole stack of cards to fall apart. And you're like, this is a bit real, you know? So... yeah, so I actually did think it was a training exercise for a minute.
Is your two colleagues and you are taken to a second location? Are you sort of outranking them? Like, is it your responsibility to make them calm? And how are you communicating if you can at all?
I think, yeah. So two things. It was my responsibility. That was my OP at the time. But we were all, in fact, one of our military observers that we had there who was the most junior in terms of experience was the most senior in terms of rank. You know, he was a lieutenant colonel. And so, yeah, how we communicated was indirectly. Like you hear each other in each other's tone because there were so many things going on. And you got to think about Miko was still trying to make a mayday call and communicate what was going on, which is how we were hearing about alternative causes of actions that could be taken on our behalf. Can I double click on this one? We had very low confidence that alternative causes of actions that could be taken to save us were going to pan out in any way. I think what we were mindful that the stuff we were hearing as suggestions was just there to give us a little sprinkle of hope. And the reason for it is that months prior, when we were stuck in that border with Jordan, the 38 hours that we had in a bunker. The whole way through, we had some high-flying UN people talking to us about a diplomatic corridor being created for us from New York. New York was apparently up and at it, trying to create a diplomatic corridor. I'm like, how do you know, there's two rebels on two different checkpoints that don't have direct access to you. How are you going to what are you going to do? How are you going to speak to them? And we were freed only because a random soldier from a nearby mission had gone in, had a wonderful moment, a coffee sharing moment with one of the rebels months prior, rocked up in the middle of the day and went, hey, dude, can you just give us a window? Can you just give us 10 minutes window? Can you speak to your mate on the other checkpoint and open up a window for us? So we kept making jokes that diplomatic corridor is usually a dude that decides to share a cup of coffee with another dude. And that's your way to life.
Human connection.
Human connection. It's gold. Do you know what I mean? Gold. So in that particular incident, when we were taken hostage, we had this Miko contemplating and discussing and processing all the stuff that was coming back from HQ, from headquarters for us. I was trying to talk to the people who were wanting to break into our building. And our third military observer was none the wiser. At the time, he was asleep in a bunker on the side of our main building, and the bunker was soundproof. So he had no idea. He had absolutely no clue what was going on.
So they're just three of you in the whole of the OP, you call it?
Yeah, observation post.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. I was thinking there was like a whole force of people and just you three were targeted, but it was just you three
Just
there.
us.
Right.
Yeah.
So the detail sort of, the next step is, I don't know, after the whole thing lasts about 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they take you to the new place and you're in this new environment, what's happening? What's going through your head? Are you just trying to, I understand that you talked a lot and you asked a lot of questions, and it was perhaps your curiosity which in the end helped get you out of there.
Yeah, that was an epiphany we had some months later, What happened is we had a few wins along the way. So, for example, when we were being taken, when we were extracted out of the OP, we got dragged through minefields, and we were saying, Miko and I were saying, man, this is a bad idea. I was trying to tell the rebels, no go, boom, boom, boom. They understood perfectly well what this was all about, but they knew the path. And Miko turned to me and said, hey, dude, we're doing it for real. Now, earlier that day, Miko and I had been training on this 2x2 platform, concrete platform, doing, burpees and everything one must do if you're bored. And we were playing this track by The Prodigy that has, we walk through the minefields. And by that stage, we had a few kind of indications that this was not going to be easy. We've had a few little moments of, forceful nudges along the way. But this one moment was a steal. And so Miko gave us this moment of hope. So we giggled for a hot second. And then we knew that the reaction that our team gave us, some of them were prepared to listen. Some of them were kind of curious to hear what this was all about. I noticed that one of the people that helped me, he smelled like cigarettes. And so I said to him, can I have a cigarette? Have heard from some 1960s book in Conduct After Capture that if your captors give you a moment of grace, you have higher probability of survival. And so we're walking through these minefields. Miko was talking about The Prodigy. I'm smoking a cigarette that was just disgusting. And so by the time when we were in what was supposed to be our first holding area, we had a few little wins. Do you know what I mean? Like we knew that we weren't going to, it was a kind of a malleable space. If you'd imagine, if you're in training exercises in the past, particularly when you are practicing conduct after capture situation in trained military forces, there is no wiggle room. It is a hard front. You hear your mission. If you disobey an order, you know about it. But there were a few little, wrinkles on that fabric.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, man.
That you're being taken by this organization who there's a low chance of you surviving it. Beheading is part of their arsenal. You're getting dragged across a minefield, but you managed to frame it in a positive light and have a giggle.
I know.
That's just remarkable.
I mean, it was funny though.
Yeah. I don't know how to react in the retelling of some of this stuff.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It is a bit funny. And do you know what actually got us there? This is the thing. Like if you just make a little tiny space for laughter, anything is better, right? But the thing that actually got us there is what a bunch of clowns, right? So we were walking through the minefields, and like it's kind of clear. We didn't know if this was an inshallah moment, like if we die, we die. But, some of the rebels in front of us were trying to point which way to go, like where were the no mines. I'm like, well, these mines are so volatile and so old that they shift. So you might have a marking on it. But, it shifts with weather and everything else. So they were bouncing around across the mines. We screwed. But Miko and I were doing this. And again, we looked at ourselves and we were both going, ugh. And it's
like wincing as if
just
any moment.
With them, we were thinking, what are you going to do? You protect your dentures? Like, what it's like the first reaction you have is like, you're gonna have to maybe think that this is a significant boom, and it's not gonna it's not gonna make much difference. What? Like, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
So you get this moment, and then it was Miko's like little trying to spice things up by saying, we're doing it for real, because we'd replayed that song a million times, trying to do the maximum amount of burpees on the Golan Heights. Just the irony is, you can't miss that moment, can you?
What a whirlwind. So link us up to when you got an initial sense that you might get released and how that came about, like what was happening in the hours before.
I mean, I don't think we were confident that we were free until we were in the OP. Like, that is the creepiest feeling of all, right? And so we were in the building, and there were so many random moments in that building. Can I just share a couple, just so that we can understand how unique different human experiences can be? Because that was the stuff that was stacking up in my mind. We were held in a living room, and the village is called Bir Ajam, right, in Syria. And so that village had particular ethnic group in it that clearly loved color and vibrancy. And so you walk in, and the village had been abandoned for some time. But the first stuff you notice is that there were like different age group shoes at the front, dusted, because that's the area that has been pammeled on for a while, dusty and messy. There were still pictures on the wall of family members. If you look at, those little coffee cabinets that you have, old coffee cabinets with glass on it, you could see that there were precious china pieces in it. The whole thing looked surreal. I guess if you were taken in a barn space, you don't have the visual cue to make sense of stuff or to keep yourself entertained and start making sense of it. But this was like haunted and ghastly, like, because you're thinking, I remember thinking genuinely at the time, I was like, shit, did they leave alive? Did they walk out voluntarily? Where are they? And so that's to appreciate that much of what was in this house was probably accumulated in the course of generations, and all that was left behind was everything. It was a lot. So we were held there. We had few really, really kind of prickly moments where we realized that in different stages, we could hear people debating and arguing, sometimes in the heated discussions with one another. We weren't sure if they're trying to work out where to ship us to. We struck the conversation with a couple of our security forces who were 13-year-olds, no kidding, and they were holding the, AK-47, the weapon, in the most dangerous way. You know what I mean? Like in a way that would hurt them before it causes any harm. So, I remember Miko just looking me sideways because I was trying to correct how they hold the weapon so that they don't injure themselves. It's like, you don't want to be responsible for a kid, shooting themselves in the foot. But we started a conversation around a photo. So one of our captors who spoke okay English stepped in at one point. We don't know what had triggered him, but he was pissed off. He was angry. And he came in and he showed us a picture in his wallet saying, they're all dead. They're all dead. And it was family. And they must have been having discussion about how useless we are, or how to make sense, or how to take full advantage of us. And I said to him, I'm really sorry, that is devastating. Miko also has a wife and a child at home. We feel your pain, and that could have just gone every which way, but it's what felt true in the moment. And so one conversation led to another. We found that one of our captors had just was on track to finish his PhD in physics in Damascus University before the war started. That they looked like they'd been scooped up from left, right, and center, and they had nothing else to do. And so we were released soon after. We were shown the word humility in an English-Arabic dictionary, which we have no idea why. We don't know if they meant the right word, or we don't know if we showed it or they're showing it to us. But also having secured for them audience with the UN general who was responsible for the region at the time. So they had my radio, and they allowed me to radio back to headquarters and tell my headquarters that we are alive and well and okay. And funny, can I just... Our boss was in Israel at the time, so radioed us to headquarters. And I said to him, sir, we are good, we are okay, we are alive. And he was saying on the radio, are you really, really okay? Are you really, really okay? I'm like, what do I say? I mean, like, if you have people pointing guns at you, what are you going to say anyway?
Yeah. That doesn't sound like protocol.
It wasn't a very protocol thing, but I think the whole thing was out of protocol.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we were not supposed to be there. It was, we had them worried, majorly worried. You know what I mean?
Is it my understanding right? You kind of don't really know why they released you. Like you can guess and you can think it was humility and maybe it was like the way you were talking to them or all these little things, but you don't know. But you just did everything right that you could.
I think so. I mean, I think we were a very precious target. You know, it doesn't get any better than 3 UN observers from 3 different countries. It just, if you want to make a point, it's perfect posy for that, you know. I don't think we did anything particularly magnificent. Maybe there was always the hope that if we played our cards right and they played their cards right, they would secure that audience with the general, because the ultimate goal is to discuss why they haven't received the support that had been promised to them in terms of weapons systems and food and, you know, which is fair point, you know. It's what UN should have been doing. Maybe the fact that they had guaranteed, and this is the thing, when we were released, we will walk back the same way we came in. Rebels started peeling off behind us, and we were thinking, is this the end or is this the beginning of something?
Shit.
I know.
Yeah, right, of course. You don't, holy shit, I didn't
None
think
of it makes
that.
sense.
No. But it's also through the minefield again.
Yeah.
Right? And so
That good old chestnut.
Yeah. And so, okay, so they start fading away, and then eventually you get what happens when you get through that door or to the other side. Are you hugging? Are you emotional?
No, because we had the UN general was there with his entire convoy, and we needed to see them on top of the hill for us to walk back up. And so it was a really weird thing. So we knew that the whole convoy is there. They're already waiting for our arrival. I was walking up. The guys were laughing at me because I said, that's enough now. That's enough, out loud, which is just, I was thinking in my mind, I was like, I don't need any more adventure. I'm good. And so we had everybody was there. So we knew that hopefully they're not going to make a final stint with us and showcase brutality in the last moment. But then they pulled out, there's so many random moments. They pulled out a camera just before they handed us over, a video camera. And as the I don't know, accidental lead of this entire scenario, they said to me, you need to tell the camera that we treated you really well and we were very kind. I needed to tell that to the camera. And then you have this, like in the sleep-deprived brain, all these rule books about what are you supposed to say on a camera when someone asks you. I'm like, my cup of coffee is there. I just want to have a coffee.
Yeah,
So that was until the last minute. We weren't quite sure what the whole ordeal was about, whether this was the end, or was that the beginning of something enormous.
What are you supposed to say on camera? What is the protocol if you're asked to do something?
It's classified, mate. You can't know.
I mean, you don't say anything that is incriminating, you know, or that masks reality. And if you are forced to say something, you do it in a way that shows you don't mean it.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Okay.
Sending secret messages to Jamie through a video camera, you know?
yeah, blinking like Morse code.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so what does the 24 hours look like afterwards? Like, this is adrenaline, right, the whole time. Even in those final moments, you're not sure if it's the end or whatever. And then when you finally do feel safety, what do you remember?
We did something quite weird. The first thing is that we were extracted out, and we had to go and be thoroughly checked. And no one, like that was probably the even more confronting side of things, you know, like particularly for a female that was held, the biggest concern was that, you know, you don't come back the same in any way, you know. But yeah, so once this was over, we made someone, I don't know who that clever person was in our vehicle. We thought, you know what? We should go back to our observation post and just make it back our home. Just claim back our memory, close the loop.
I wondered about that, yeah.
I can't remember who said it.
But you did do that.
We did do that. And then you can see everyone going, do we really have to? Can we just can we not go home? But the weird thing is, so we went back because
Make my bed.
nerds. It was really important because we needed to understand, we needed to make sense of it ourselves. That was really, really powerful. And sort of sound out with each other where we were at. We'd already provided all the factual details, so it wasn't like we were trying to create a cohesive story. We were trying to make sense of what we felt before we ended up going back into the big attention sort of storm. The point of difference was that they'd given us a whole, I don't know, it was like 20 odd people with weapons, UN forces. Andov was there for us to protect our sleep because we decided to come back. So it was just very confusing because we're like, we're just a bunch of princesses now, like coming back to the place of capture to reconnect with the experiences. So it was,
Did
but it was
help,
special.
Do you think, doing that?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
you would do that again.
Do you want to hear an odd fact
Yes.
as well? I just remembered it on the drive here. We came back, the damage was done, but what I found unforgivable about this situation is someone had gotten into my toiletry bag and stolen a brand new perfume. I'm not kidding. So it's like, what is the focus of these individuals? So you're beginning to make sense. This is some desperate kid, sees something they hadn't seen for ages, hopes that they can pass it on to their missus or mum, and steals my perfume. So it was from a deepest emotions and feelings and worries and concerns to the tactical stuff through to the minor silly stuff, like the prodigy and the perfume bottle.
What was the fragrance? Do you remember?
Narcisco Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Narcisco Rodriguez.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, you have not lived.
The blue one.
The black one.
No, the black one.
There is no blue one.
Oh, the blue
but
one's the men's one.
Is there actually?
Yeah.
She's a
High
big
five.
fragrance guy.
fragrance.
It's a weird red.
But did you, like when people have their house robbed, they never feel safe in that house again. And quite often people will move and things like that. So what was your experience of having that space violated? And like, did you move away? Are you redeployed straight away? Do you remain in that OP? Do you stay on the mission? Like, what does the aftercare look like from a situation like that?
Well, we cleaned our OP. Random, do you know what I mean? We hadn't slept. We were just like sitting there cleaning the OP from all the damage that was done. Just random ideas. So maybe this was the claiming back your space, making it your own, making sense of what had happened, allowing the new stuff that has happened to be a part of the space. The OP was then uninhabited for a period of time, and we were dispersed to other observation posts on the other side of the technical fence right after. I think we had 2 days stand down. So Jamie and I went to Haifa and ate loads of cheesecake, basically, and then came back to work, which is actually helpful.
Yeah. Back on the
Do you know
horse.
what I mean? Yeah.
You said there the fear for a woman taken captive is that they won't sort of ever be the same. When you reflect on it, like, is it different now looking back from when it was sort of a week and a month and a year? And has it changed you in any way across that time period?
I think my appreciation for the gains of this experience have like been confirmed and deepened and broadened beyond what I could have expected, right? This could have been a nuisance of an incident, a lessons learned for us military observers. But when I look back, I just cannot get over the fact that even in the worst scenario, if you just let it, you can find something meaningful in a fellow human. You can connect. I love that, just to see a common ground with your worst adversary. And that reference point came from one of our SAS mentors, who both Jamie and I love dearly, and I think every member of the SAS does as well. Seeing a common ground with your worst adversary just changes things a lot. And I think now when I look back and you look at all the events in history that have happened since and in the past, how dumb we are and how dumb we can be if we don't allow that to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look at every one of these situations, it's triggered by something significant and meaningful. There's a tiny percentage of the population that sits in a slither of this critical, dark, irreparable aspects of psychological, psychoticism and nastiness, The rest of us are trying to communicate something in an unhelpful way sometimes. So it was, I think it makes me hero up the power of curiosity on another level. Also because I feel nothing but gratitude for it. Is that appropriate? You know?
Yeah, it's your
Yeah.
It's
story.
yours. It's
Yeah.
yours to
Yeah.
make sense of, as you will.
Just on the timelines on it, this was 2013. You released your book, The Resilience Toolkit, a few years ago?
Yeah.
2 years
2
ago?
years, yeah.
Did this incident form the basis for what you would do across the next years? Like, we're going to talk a little bit later about all of the different elements that perhaps you, in hindsight, you realized you were using. But was this the base of what you went on to write?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the starting point for a whole new field of thought that I didn't know existed. So months and months later, when we came back to New Zealand, I'd started my PhD research already, and I'd found this incredible professor called Professor Catherine Pavlovich. Weirdly enough, I found her when I was in Kabul many years prior, and all I was doing is going to world's leading resilience people looking for tips and tools to help my soldiers do better, you know? And the response I got was, rather than tools, serendipitously, Professor Pavlovich has scholarship for a student in your field. And I thought, so that stayed all this time. I met with Catherine in Waikato University, and she was asking me questions about the incident. And she had this stare, that look at her going, was it curiosity that got you out of your predicament? Up until that point, the boys had been saying that they released us because they talked so much and asked so many questions. They were like, she's never going to shut up. Send them back. Get someone else in. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And also, it was curiosity. You know, it was curiosity making in a moment that you could easily just put the blinkers on. But if you have this little one, like this added space, curiosity hadn't been well researched in resilience at all. And it deserved huge amount of attention. So I went from this, that's 9 months later, to then reverting back to the SAS. I was, pregnant with Alex at the time, with my son, asking members of the SAS whether curiosity supported their resilience. And the response was like, what, like Pippi Longstockings? I'm like, yeah. and it became a thing. And then, yeah.
So curiosity helped you in this instance because as soon as you were attacked, you wanted to know who they were, what their motivations were. You needed to be curious about the state of mind of your other colleagues. You got to the second location and you need to know what they're talking about and how to connect with them. Like, that's what you're talking about. Like, just everything you're interested in and need to know what's going on.
That's it. Just trying to find the littlest thing to sense make with, because the minute you allow yourself to be fully overwhelmed, you're missing the ability to engage. You lose sense of agency. You lose sense of agency, your cognitive ability, your ability to reason, to regulate your emotions, to engage in your environment in a way that creates any significant intentional influence, drops. So, but it's not a conscious thing. Do you know what I mean? It's, if you pay attention, there's plenty to be entertained by, you know what I mean, in any environment.
Okay. I'm going to link. Yeah, go on.
One last thing is, I think it's for this situation, but you received a couple of acknowledgements, UN medals. Like Jamie, after his situation, his kind of philosophy, and I'm paraphrasing here, is sort of, well, that's my job, that's what I do.
Yeah.
How did the acknowledgements or accolades sit with you from that?
Super embarrassing. Because again, like, maybe this is what military, maybe it's a New Zealand military thing, maybe it's just generally military people. In any situation that we encounter, there would have been someone, maybe not in our generation, but the preceding generation, that has experienced worse. And you do get prepared for all of that stuff, right? There's a handful of humans that have done magnificently beyond the brief. But, it's you kind of should expect that. It's part of your risk assignment, that these things could happen. So it did feel embarrassing, but it's not for us, it's to showcase what people are expected to do in situations like this,
And was that the highest risk place you'd been up until that point?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
That you can talk about?
Okay, I'm going to link us back to Resilience Toolkit, but I kind of want to give the listeners a little bit of a picture of Alia and, the foundation, I guess. So you came to New Zealand as a 17-year-old who spoke no English. And incredible, like, just the way that you can articulate your story and write. It's just mind-blowing for starters. But I'm interested in growing up in post-Cold War Bulgaria. what, how that shaped you, how that formed you, the like influence of your dad. Can you take us back there?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is still. I still feel Bulgarian, even though I've been here more than I have in Bulgaria. It's an exceptionally interesting time. I think I wouldn't have called it exceptionally interesting time if it wasn't to my dad. And thank you for mentioning him. He had an uncanny way, still does, finding something interesting in every situation. I think this is my grandma that did it. She used to have this saying, you could find something. Oh, well, the saying from Bulgarian is you can find something to do even if you're content in something as little as a matchbox. It's a stupid thing, like it's like be purposeful is the whole idea. But growing up in post-communist Bulgaria was a messy business. We had obviously hyperinflation. There was a period of time when we couldn't buy toilet paper. There was a toilet paper crisis. You get this like random things in the mix. There was one shop. The shop was called Corecom, and it sold Western stuff. And you had 2 coupons a year to get Western stuff. Toblerone, still loving Toblerone because of that. And the rest of it was just, hyperinflation, post-crisis, new crisis state of being. Crime, organized crime was significant risk. You saw the signs of it everywhere. It's a sad state of affair that is experienced by many places around the world. And you see the degradation of infrastructure. You see colliding perspectives, the history books that were written for communist times suddenly changing overnight into a new story being told. It was messy, but also fascinating. I had incredible extended family as well. Epic cousins who just cannot stop laughing. They always find a reason to laugh their heads off or some, like I saw them in January, exceptional bunch of super happy, purposeful humans. Incredible friends, exceptional godmom who was focusing on learning and history. And so to me it was just that.
You were also an elite level athlete, I've been told. Springboard diving, the Bulgarian springboard diving team.
Yeah.
Were there any interesting...
Did Jamie tell you that?
Yeah. Were there anything training methods or anything interesting about that scene?
So much of it. And you couldn't choose back in the day in communist or post-communist times. You'd had physical trainers that come and select you for different teams based on your muscle dexterity and...
Really?
Uh-huh.
You're a diver.
Yeah.
You're a football player.
That's it.
You're a gymnast.
Yeah.
You play ice hockey.
You're 5 years old and that's you.
Oh. Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it takes the thinking task out of it, right?
I guess so.
Always finding the positives.
Yeah. Such an interesting outlook. But wow.
Yeah. So I think it was springboard diving and gymnastics, and my sister was in gymnastics. Anyway, but it was amazing, and we had the same trainer. Auntie Mary was her name, who was grumpy as hell, but also spectacular. And so if you were chickening out of a jump, like I remember distinctly, 10-meter platform, my first jump would have been like I 8 at that stage. Platform jump, I just, when you fall from 10 meters on water, it sucks, especially if you fall on your stomach. Your air gets out of your soul, And I got dragged out of the pool, and then of course you have to go and do it immediately again. And she would have this habit, if you didn't do things well or chickened out on what you were supposed to be doing next, she'd take her rubber sole slippers and start climbing up. She was a bit heavy. So she'd start climbing up and you could hear the doom, 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 like the impending doom. And then you jump before you get the gentle on the bum, because it's just like, what's the worst pain you can experience? But it's some amazing stuff I learned from it.
Was Olympics a possibility in your future? Were you that good? Or could you have been that good if Auntie Mary really worked the jandal?
Yeah, and if my dad didn't decide to come to New Zealand to...
But it was a reality on your horizon?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
whether it was a good thing or not, I don't know. But
do you ever think about what life might have been like if you'd have been an Olympic diver?
Not so much. No.
not until now.
Yeah. No, it's like, yeah.
So your dad brings you across to New Zealand at 17. Why? And what's 17-year-old Alia like?
Do you even know New Zealand at 17?
We had pictures. My dad had sent us pictures, and it was hills and sheep. And I'm not kidding. We still have them. We didn't know New Zealand. My dad had a friend, someone who he had trained. My dad was an Air Force pilot and a hang glider pilot. And so his thing was, he was fed up with corruption. He didn't want his daughters to grow up in a country like Bulgaria in its state at the time. And he wanted to go as far as possible. So he came to New Zealand on a hang gliding competition down at Cadrona. And we didn't fully know, but his plan was to never come back. And so he had all these other plans over time that he was saying if he couldn't secure a job in 3 months, he was going to jump out of the plane or come out of the plane, not jump out of it, in Australia on the way back. He was never, ever coming back. He was not going to be living this time in history there. And the really odd thing about it, I mean, this is a guy who's highly educated. He's had flown everything that can possibly fly, including a tablecloth. Like that's a family joke. He broke his legs once trying to jump with a tablecloth when he was a kid. And he couldn't find a job as a cherry picker. Like he went from Christchurch to Alexandra on a borrowed bike, and they told him that he is colorblind on a test, probably because he didn't know English, didn't know how to respond to questions or read the questions. So they said to him, like, can't pick cherries. So it was really awesome to be able to start completely from scratch,
But daunting as a teenager?
It was sold as a great idea, like an epic adventure, And so I'd known about the possibility. So my dad left when I was 15. And so the plan started kind of to evolve for a couple of years. It took us 2 years to get to New Zealand after he left, which was for all sorts of reasons. But by that stage, it sounded like the most extraordinary thing. And we could always come back, We had $500 each to come back with. Swimming.
So the road to psychology starts with law. You do a law degree for a few years and decide it's not.
Well, hang on, mate. You got to learn English too. How's that happen?
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to get the road to psychology is via law. Learn English first.
Yeah, good point.
How does that even?
Good point. Well made.
I've read Thomas the Tank Engine cartoons, but
did I actually, and also
no. That's what is it like? Is there GST added to that story, or is that the legit way of learning? Is via TV and?
It was not Thomas the Tanky. It was something else, and my dad had videotapes for us, that had kids' cartoons on it, and it was pretty amazing, like the repetitive learning colors, learning Apple. That was the beginning of it. And then I had Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince, which I knew by heart in Bulgarian. And,
I'm nodding like I know. I don't know.
You don't know? It's amazing. It's a kid's book, right?
Okay.
And so it's kind of going what language would make sense? How does that language travel together? But we didn't have much time to waste. I wanted to be in university. I wanted to start my life as quickly as possible. So I had a few months. I remember trying to enroll in university, and like Wise University had me with my mother, who didn't speak English, interviewed by this individual who was trying to help us understand that this is probably not a good idea. It's not a good idea to waste money. And we had to sign, there was exceptional attention to the potential for failure, that we didn't click onto. But it just life needed to start and needed to move. And those were the areas of interest.
Which for New Zealanders often is the case for their children, is to try and provide them with the best education possible to give them the best start. So was that the situation for your parents as well, as wanting you to thrive in this new environment?
My dad had one rule, which is just connect yourself with it. That was it. It didn't. He would have been happy if I stayed. Nothing wrong with hospitality, but if I'd stayed in hospitality, so I had 3 jobs at one point, trying to save up for first year uni. He would have been happy with anything so long as I felt connected with the space. That was the only rule. You just go any which way you want. And his second rule is just, as a parent, it was get out of their way. So you just choose your thing, you do your thing. So long as you're doing your thing, you're good to go. That was the rule.
And to pick up Stephen's point, you start with law.
Yeah.
And you end at psychology.
So silly. It was because I thought, Bulgaria, post-communist conflict, global conflict was fascinating to me. This was obviously proximate to Bosnia and a conflict in Bosnia. So the whole idea of human rights really inspired and excited me, and I wanted to study that. But then by the time when I got to international law, thankfully, I'm not too slow of a learner. I was like, obviously this is not something, not the most impactful way to make a difference, at least for someone like me. So, yeah, it was not giving me any any happy vibes at all.
But you find happy vibes in psychology.
100%.
You find your calling, your home. You do a psychology
100%.
degree. And
Yeah.
then out the other side of it, it seems the story I've heard is that you were sort of going with one of your friends to an interview with the military. And
Oh, did you hear that?
You ended up getting hired and she didn't?
He didn't.
He didn't?
Yeah. He wanted to join the army because there were a lot of good-looking men in it. I was there to support him along the way. He wasn't selected, and I was.
But they liked you. And then had you considered work in the military before that?
I mean, do you know how naive, like there's so many levels of naivety that thank goodness are present when you're pursuing something you don't understand well enough, you know? Yeah. So I'd just gotten a really good job offer in a consulting firm in Christchurch. I had a wonderful boyfriend. You know, my mum was real happy. I was ticking all the boxes on her like secret map of success. And then it was, you know, that situation with the officer selection board happened. I wanted to go there because I wanted to experience that's the mecca for selection boards, right? And I'd done industrial and organizational psychology, and there's nothing than experience that can teach you how to do your craft. Like you want to walk through it. But I was so unprepared. I have no idea why they selected me. Would have been a total laugh. But I was so unprepared for what I was signing up for. I remember the person interviewing me was saying, if you were not selected as an officer, which is a common question they ask at the end, just to check how committed you are to the cause. If you're not selected as an officer, would you be okay to serve as a soldier? And I was like, well, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Like, where's that?
Yeah.
Help an old lady out here.
Yeah.
What a nerd. Yeah, but
how old are you at this?
Yeah,
at this point?
I wanted to ask.
25.
Okay.
25.
So that's
24.
That's an 8-year journey from arrival, no English, to degree and vocation
Army.
in New Zealand's military.
Yeah.
Okay, so but you do join. You do take the role. And then within a year, you are made head of psychology for the SAS?
And
Yes.
shoulder tapped.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, more. I think maybe they had nobody else.
No.
Trust her.
Don't
Probably
play
had
that.
nobody.
Don't bring that Kiwi, I don't know what happened attitude.
So
Stick to the Bulgarian side. What happened?
Yeah.
Your first year and someone has seen, wow, okay, she needs to be driving this division. Or what have they seen, do you think?
Energy, apparently. Energy, which can go both ways, you know. And so it was, the role requires, the core part of the role is supporting and observing the SAS selection process, which is really critical, and the training cycle after that, right? And then subsequently, as the years progressed, it's also a matter of supporting teams and individuals on deployments. So, you know, you have to have deep sense of commitment. You need to display, obviously, craft. But the more important part is commitment. How committed are you? Because nothing is by the book. Everything changes. Everything is wildly unpredictable, highly pressured. You have to be able to operate at your best in situations of deprive. You know, so it's not everybody's cup of tea, I think, you know. And it doesn't pay you more than the rest of the jobs that are cushier. So it doesn't necessarily hold any visible appeal, you know? So yeah, it's a commitment first kind of thing.
Okay, so you're inside the army. I'm fascinated by the selection, and we talked with Jamie at length about it because he failed once, right? And then he comes back. So what is your role? For those that don't know, you can explain it better than me, but you know, it's a grueling multi-day test to see if you've got what it takes to become an SAS soldier.
Yeah.
And
then like a year of training after that.
But as the psychologist, when are you meeting with the people that are on the selection course? Are you helping them afterwards? Are you pre-screening them? Can you see who is going to make it before they even start?
I mean, so all of these things are so important, right? And by the way, the role of psychologist in New Zealand Special Forces is very unique and really, really, really important. I'm biased, I know, but very powerful too. So, for example, as a context, I did a TV show called SAS Celebrity Who Dares Wins with SAS members from the UK in New Zealand. Last year, I was the on-screen psychologist, and you could see the UK SAS people just being what is this beast? You know, we don't have that stuff. So we're very unique about with that. And it's important because we obviously have to overinvest in an individual and a team because we don't have capabilities that other militaries have. Just plain and simple, right? And we've always been very much focused on that stuff, on the human. So as a psychologist, you would have pre-screening, and so you'd be looking at everyone who puts forward the applications and studying the military records, the context and history, the recommendations. Then you thoroughly interview them, conduct psychological profiling with every psychometric tool you could imagine to understand what their strengths and Achilles heel or vulnerabilities are, and then carefully piece together what you might contemplate would happen. And then the selection begins. And when the selection begins, you watch it all unfold. And it's wild that in the most ethical way possible, we will do bets with DS directing staff of who we predict would succeed and fail. And it's just like you could look at the most robust human on the books and, physically and otherwise. But if they don't have, that thing that they call self-awareness is the selection gate to selection. If you don't have that, you fall apart. So psychs were always right. But the biggest chunk of what we did is people who typically didn't have the intrinsic resilience, and you could predict that to some extent on profile. The process is so grueling and so involved that you just can't mask it. You can't fake it for that long at that extreme level.
Just on that, what do you mean self-awareness? If you don't have self-awareness, you will fall apart. So we call it the gremlins, gremlins on your shoulder. And this is something that comes from one of our notorious directing staff. He'd always say, like, the gremlins are too loud. So you are effectively, it's a solo trip, right? It's solo trip through pain and sleep deprivation and hunger. And so inevitably your body kicks into this stuff that, it tells you shouldn't continue, that your feet are too sore. Maybe next year you'll succeed. Your blister is going to trip you up in 3 kilometers from here, so why continue? Or, you know what, you should just have a sleep. You know what, life outside of the SAS is way more appealing. That's the gremlin of doubt, right? Self-sabotaging thoughts that are your body is trying to protect you with so you don't continue to cause yourself pain. And so those that lack self-awareness and understanding of how to manage these moments of doubt inevitably succumb to them. This handful of individuals who have been withdrawn by us for medical reasons, and they just simply, it's not safe for them to continue. But the most significant withdrawal rate comes from people who have found along the way a reason not to do it anymore, That
was one of my massive takeaways from our conversation with Jamie was going into it, my perception fed by cultural phenomenon is that SAS or elite soldiers are grunts. They are big, tough guys, boot doors down, shoot everything in sight. But the level of intellect that I observed from Jamie and the self-awareness, as you put it as well, really changed my perspective on all of it. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it from the inside around being able to profile those people that come in and then almost bet who is, well, as you said, bet who's going to make it is really, it's really fascinating that you could do all the press ups and all the runs and everything that you want to do, but ultimately this thing is the thing that's going to get you through.
Yeah. And that thing is knowing yourself, which is the most, do you know what I mean? We could have obviously level of intellect and particularly abstract reasoning, like ability to make sense of stuff that doesn't on the face of it look like it should travel together. Essential, because you just simply cannot survive in that environment without having that innate abstract reasoning ability. But you have such huge range of personalities in that team, which is essential. And yet the one thing that they have in abundance is that understanding themselves. They don't have to be speaking like they're mini psychs about their feelings and thoughts, but they just know what's there to take away from them and what's there to contribute to them. It's incredible.
That team element to it, does that come into your assessment as well of gauging who's currently actively serving and what skill sets or what sort of people would complement that group?
I mean, skill sets it's less about skill sets and more about will and mindset. Like if you think about like random little triangle skill sets, yes, but so much of the skills that are required for the job are trained on the job in that environment, right? So good solid base of military bearing is essential or helpful in some cases. But the most important part is what is the mindset and what is the will, And so are they able to morph and adjust and, be first amongst equals? It's a hard yakka,
Is it hard? Do you take it home with you, the work? You know, like when you're talking to these soldiers about the issues or whatever it is, like is it quite a heavy toll on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I've got all the drills, all the routines, everything that I know is required for a human being to be able to create, a separation between where they were and where they're heading, home and work. But I think it's unethical and almost insane to imagine that you can create this blunt divide if you care. And I think everyone in my profession should really care, because you get to notice stuff. It's also part of your own processing, right? It doesn't matter how many drills you've got. There are ways for you. You don't need to absorb other people's story. That's sympathy rather than empathy, right? But yeah, I think it's unethical and insane to imagine that you don't. What you do with it is a different story, right?
Yeah.
And then similar but different. So sports teams, if they have a sports psych on staff, will travel with a team when they go overseas so that they have the resource available to them.
That's it.
Same for you on deployment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if a team is deployed to Afghanistan, you're going as well? Wow.
Not all the time. You don't sit in their pockets 24/7.
No, I get it.
That
I
would
get
be
it.
very
But
annoying for them.
yeah. But yeah. Wow. Whole
Okay.
world you're just not aware of.
As I said at the start, there's too much to cover, but I want to give plenty of time to talk about Resilience Toolkit. And I think that's laid such a great foundation. The listeners that are with us, there's so much goodness here that I think they can take into their everyday. And I wanted to start by, I asked you for an email the other night of such some interesting sort of places we could go. And I sort of want to sort of go through them. The first one is, it's what you encounter the most these days, limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Like what do you mean by that?
I just, it freaks me out. And I think, I don't know if I shared that, but I was coming out of Malibu and I almost had this the other week. Some weeks ago, I was in Malibu for work, and you could see these perfectly put together humans that are just moving under this heavy weight of worries, concerns, that idea of not quite being there. You know, there is this phrase we use in my team of professionals at the moment called "life is elsewhere," where you have these extraordinary humans that hold so much doubt that isn't even theirs to own, and contort themselves in so many shapes that are there for the external world to be impressed by, that they lose sense of who they are. And so when I was referring to self-limiting beliefs, there is pages and pages of headings that can be in that category alone. But I find that the amount of it is overwhelming, maybe because we used to belong to a small group of people, and the people that you cared about would have been your mates and your family perhaps. And now you have the world looking at you, or you looking at the world, and is that constant external reference point that we make, many of us, to what makes us worthwhile. And so, yes, self-limiting beliefs are abundant, and they obstruct so much of what we can achieve. It infuriates me.
So what do you do when you're working with a client that you can see has self-limiting beliefs? Is there a first step that you make? Is it just making them aware of their own self-limiting beliefs?
That is the most important part, right?
Awareness.
Is actually, yeah, absolutely. Understand it. Awareness of yourself, awareness of the context that this thing has emerged in, and also developing that kind of resilient neutrality about it. What purpose does it serve? Oftentimes these things, these little gremlins, if we keep calling them that, serve a purpose to protect you, to guide you, to they're misdirected, but to direct you in a towards your goal, whatever that might be. And when we begin to notice the burden of it and the way in which it obstructs the aim, the job to be done is to actually pull back and observe it and understand what purpose it actually serves. And when you get there, the rest of it is just piece of cake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you've understood it, you know that it's not necessarily just a gremlin you have to cover up all the time, but you begin to make sense of it and make more meaningful ways to thriving.
Yeah, I think we should introduce the 4 pillars now. A, B, C, D. Awareness, belonging, curiosity, and drive. All equally. So this is the sort of the base of your book, the Resilience Toolkit, which I've been working my way through over the last week, and I can recommend it to everyone. There's so much goodness in there.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about these pillars? Like, are some of them more important than others? Are they all equally important?
Before you answer that, was it just a beautiful coincidence that it was the first 4 letters of the alphabet?
No, but
or very, very deliberate.
It was actually, I mean, I think we've not renamed any of them in any particular way. Like, this is stacking up the juiciest, most impactful, most meaningful, most pragmatic research for 1,000 years. It's not just me, it's a whole group of people that I work with. And it edit. I mean, there's a military model that is about how do you make sense of ambiguous situation, and it's the 4 R's. But this applies.
It's not the same ring to
perfect.
us,
It doesn't, does it? But this applies a whole heap more meaningfully to human psyche and patterns of behavior and what we humans need in the kind of wider scope, as opposed to just crisis situations. It's the one-off crisis as well as the wider grind of life. How do you thrive through it? So I love that it's Sesame Street simple.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, like I guess you do a lot of keynotes, you do a lot of speaking, you work with organizations. Like when you talk to a group, what is your message? What is it about resilience that you're trying to get through?
I think the most important starting point. So if you think about every one of these elements, awareness, self-awareness, situational awareness, interpersonal awareness, this really does matter. But I'm a massive fan of simple heuristics because, when things happen, that's the only thing you can remember. My rule of thumb or favorite heuristic is just learning to mind where your mind goes. So we are in this kind of dopamine saturated environment. We get constant distraction and things are taking up porous attention. Awareness is about minding where your mind goes, about understanding how it can go adrift in all sorts of random places. Understanding that we have negativity bias, not because we are grumpy bears, but because that's what we are wired for, right? The amygdala is tango dancing with really scattered reality, trying to protect you. But our job is to ensure that we create as many ways as possible for us and our vision to thrive. And so minding where your mind goes means noticing these scatter moments, focusing and refocusing back on your intent, relocating a sense of strength that comes from belonging, not belonging to necessarily your family or community, but belonging to yourself, to the stuff that matters most right now. Kicking into capacity for curiosity, which obviously if I could cuddle curiosity, I would for the rest of my life. And then the final one is drive. I mean, I work with some of the most ambitious humans and groups on the planet, and they don't apologize for it. But one thing we constantly forget, like they want this, do more, do it faster, achieve as quickly as possible, drive. But purpose precedes drive. And we see nothing but negative outcomes when humans or teams try to align themselves to an outcome without having that connection to purpose. So mind where your mind goes, belong and make better, embrace curiosity, and purpose precedes drive.
There was a stat that you provided, which I thought was incredible. The top 1% of successful people have lower IQ than the 10% below them. And the difference is EQ, and that starts with knowing self.
Doesn't that annoy you? Like, because you think...
Depends. If you've got high EQ, it's all good, like me.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't stack up against some of the things we are observing at the moment. I was about to say, imagine the boss of everything. And like I'm imagining some candidate bosses around the world that don't fit EQ or IQ. I'm not going to go into politics, but isn't that confronting?
Yeah.
And it does kind of make sense, right? So EQ, obviously understanding yourself, understanding your environment, emotional intelligence is what we are talking about. I'm tempted to say increasingly more important. Because I was trying to talk to my son yesterday. He was talking about he wants to become a pilot and an engineer. And I obviously want to encourage anything he wants to do. But I was saying to him, buddy, the job that you're going to have might not exist now. So just, go with what you're excited about, what you're passionate about, and maybe it'll morph and evolve.
You say, buddy, you're going to be a spy.
We haven't. He probably already is. Maybe he's put in our house for that reason. Yeah.
Sorry to derail.
No,
actually, I think important context because we've double skipped a chapter. So you've transitioned out of the military.
Yes.
What do you do now?
Everything.
Okay.
Everywhere. I love it.
If you were to simplify or narrow it down, what do you do?
I spend my time focusing on peak performance for individuals and teams and organizations. And I'm really lucky because I get to work from, and I was sharing this anecdote with you earlier, from spaces that are in the not-for-profit to some of the most ambitious and profitable entities, everywhere from the US through Asia to our part of the world, which I love, and beyond. So it's amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
Do you see similarities across the leading characters in those outside of the stat that we just kind of spoke about? Are there traits or are there common characteristics of those really successful people, really successful leaders?
When we are speaking of, so we have to accept that a lot of success comes from success that the person hasn't earned. That's the blunt reality of life, unfortunately, in many places around the world. And it'll continue to be the case, So that sort of familial wealth or inherited strong start from somewhere. But the leaders that matter most, that have created the most meaningful positive outcomes and that are appreciated by the most, inevitably display high levels of EQ. It's just a no-brainer. And it's, do you know what I mean? I love nothing more than testing science in the field. Like, that's my thing. I'm a field psychologist, first and foremost, So I absorb every bit of science that drops on my lap, and then I go and mess it up in reality. And it always stands out. It stacks up every single time. And the point of difference in terms of outcomes is agonizing. When you see an individual who is in charge of anything greater than themselves, when they lack self-awareness and they lack EQ, the consequences and the cost is inexcusable. Do you know what I mean? Because it has spillover effects across so many different outcomes and people, many of whom they aren't engaged with directly. Yeah, so we have, unfortunately, way too much work to do out there.
You mentioned some of the types of different people you work with. I'd be keen to get like a specific example, and you don't have to name them, but it would be good if you did. But say an elite sportsman or woman wants to work with you. They seek out you. What are they seeking out, and what does that work actually look like?
See, in different environments, the work looks on the face of it different. So elite athletes, my goodness, I've worked with some exceptional ones and still do. But
we'll know when they start liking the social post. When the blue ticks start rolling in, like, I see.
I tell you what, I mean, I can name drop, but that will just be less interesting than talking about some of my favoriteest. Yes. And so Simone Meyer, do you know who she is? Ultramarathon runner.
Yeah.
Only done it 6 times.
Yep.
Smashed the records. Runs literally on fumes, because of course there's no funding. And I'm not creating some sort of propaganda here for women's sport, by the way, maybe a little, but what I love is the beast in this human being. And what happens when you, as a geek and a scientist, observing humans who are prepared to throw it all in and do it intelligently. It's not some sort of reckless thing. I'll just go and run the hill and smash myself. It's intelligent, deliberate, planned, aware sacrifice for a goal that is just so inspiring. That blows my mind. So I don't think she needs me in any way, but when she reaches out, the conversation is usually, how do we manage the moments where pain and discomfort become so significant that you want to just, check out of something that you've worked towards for years. And that's a thing we see in corporate space, maybe not with physical pain as much, but with goals that become too complex. You are depleted, you are, exhausted, you've lost your sense of drive. How do you reconnect again with that? How do you maintain clarity of focus and purpose at times when everything is conspiring against you? And that's just amazing stuff to discuss with people like that.
Is there an easy answer for that in that example where she's wanting help for when she reached that limit and she wants to quit? What does she do?
I mean, a physical thing, I love it. And it actually comes from one of our, I think probably it's an SAS thing, I guess, is this ability to, your brain is making you really obsess over that one blister, right? And a blister could be a big issue. It's not just a small thing, right? But the job to be done is to then consciously refocus it. So address that, notice that it's happening, observe it and appreciate what it can do to you. But then start focusing on the points of strength on your body, right? So my foot is shot, but, look at my quads. My quads are super strong. Whoa, my back is so strong. I love how strong my arms are right now. And then for a microsecond, you can have this little endorphin boost that allows you to make it to the next checkpoint, strap yourself up, find a different way of positioning your back, in her case, and continuing. And it's a minor thing, right? And so, but I think if you translate those principles to situations where some of my corporate or venture people, entrepreneurs, are overwhelmed by a lack of funding or just feeling like they're hitting the head against the wall, the purpose still matters. The mission is still there, but it feels like it's not going to happen in a lifetime. So why am I sacrificing everything I've got? And it's literally just acknowledging the risk, identifying it in a moment, and looking back to reconnect again with that purpose. There are, depending on, Simone wouldn't be able to stop the race and do like a physical, mindful breathing exercise or call her mum for emotional support. That's just not practical. But in a less dynamic space, you have to ground yourself. You have to reconnect with those basics. Most of us just disregard. Check your sleep, breathe, ground yourself. All those basics that our brain is designed to ignore when we are under pressure.
Do the kind of people that contact you fit the criteria? It sounds like sort of drive, curiosity, and awareness are all combining to reach out to you, and they're looking for little 1%ers to get better.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? These are the top performers, and they're in that growth mindset the whole time where they're just trying to find out ways to get better.
Some of them, as an organizational psychologist that works with a lot of teams, unfortunately, I get tossed into environments where we have not much growth mindset at all. We have a lot of desire to prove oneself, a lot of desire to be better than others, and lack of awareness of the consequences of that and just how much broader we can grow. And some of these 1%ers would have a very narrow scope of understanding of the strength, and everything else is a bit of a blurry line because they've just been charging through, it's just pursuing this narrow field of expertise without understanding that you also have to be an averagely good human. And a lot of the time we have these individuals who are in charge of outcomes and people without the awareness. So sometimes I'm there to kind of hero up people by the sidelines. Sometimes I'm there to poke people with a stick, lovingly. Because it's like, again, I'm unapologetic about the work I do. But then I want to hero up the other top percenters that I do, which is in a not-for-profit space. They, on the book, have not achieved much. In fact, a significant number of the people I enjoy working with the most have been anti-society, and society has rejected them for a variety of reasons. Like I work with people who are young individuals in particular who are on the precipice of the Department of Correction or are in care of it. And they're the exceptional, extraordinary humans. Working with them and discovering, well, I'm not discovering it. I'm sitting along with them as they are. How powerful, how critical, and how easy it is to help someone shape their own narrative to better. That just spins my world, It's amazing stuff.
Is that super exciting when you are working with someone who has that incredible ability to reach far further than they are
fulfill their potential.
That's the word that's what I'm trying to say right
got
there.
you, bro.
Yeah. Is that the part that's
the best.
That's super rewarding? Stephen talks about the high achievers that are looking for the 1%ers. But like the 1%er who's looking for the 99% to fulfill that potential, that must fill you with immense excitement.
It's awesome stuff. And there's all this, I don't even know if this is right, but you probably have seen it at 1% every day and what it amounts to in the course of a year, right? Absolutely everyone. I'm probably the luckiest human on earth, I think, because everyone I work with is epic. Do you know what I mean? I can't, even the ones I don't like are epic. I'm not kidding. It's completely nuts. I think I'm surrounded with, and I think it's statistically improbable that it'll just be my luck. I think it's just humans are generally awesome. But yeah, for those individuals, the really fascinating part is they all have a sense of how much better life can be. Like I'm not there to unlock their potential. That's a kind of a, paternalistic way of doing it. I'm just sitting along with them, helping them communicate what the next step is. It's awesome.
This has been such a cool chat, but you come across to me as unflappable. Like nothing.
Call
is trying
Jamie.
to
Do you want to call
rattle you.
Jamie? He's moved the pillows on the couch.
My question was,
sorry.
Do you have self-doubt? Like, are there any times where some amazing person wants to work with you and you're like, oh man, whoa, like, are there any parts of your life where you doubt yourself?
I mean, I think all the time. I think it'll be insane if I didn't. Maybe because it's such again, it's a crinkly fabric, right? My doubt is, am I the best to serve you? Because I have an enormous pool of humans that I know that could serve anyone even better. And I think that's the moment of check yourself. Are you the best tool? Are you the best operator for this little assignment? And everything I get involved in is very important, to me at least. So do you know what I mean? I think I think most humans are probably like that. But if you come from where I come from and have witnessed what I have, it will be, humility first,
Is that a big part of your foundation, is looking back at where your foundations were and the experiences that you've been through as well to this point?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you meet my family in Bulgaria, if I ever presented myself as someone who lucks out and thinks that they are single-handedly going about saving the world, people would laugh loud. So I think you have to. Yeah.
I didn't know where to put this, but I want to sort of bring it in now. And it's your favorite book, and it's been mentioned by 2 or 3 other guests, and it's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And I would love for you to talk to us about why this book connected so strongly with you and what you've taken from it and how it's sort of shaped your life.
So I feel like, Man's Search for Meaning, and then it was the Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning. I don't think I've actually fully read either of them.
It's hard. It's a hard one to read. Thank God you said that, because I've been sitting on this. I admitted it in the cafe beforehand. I've tried to read it. I've tried to listen to the audiobook. It's heavy going.
It is a bit.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so much better for you admitting that. Carry on. Sorry. That was like a relief.
I don't want to take the relief from you, but what I meant was, no.
I haven't read it this week.
No. I mean, that piece about, gap between event and reaction, when you think about how simple this is, like the gap between, I think everyone has quoted Viktor Frankl on this, the gap between event and response. And in that gap lies the space for you to live your life meaningfully, right? I remember coming upon this, I think my godmom introduced me to Viktor Frankl, so I would have probably been, 14, 15, and trying to make sense of it and appreciating how much there is in this gap between event and reaction. You just can't see the world the same way if you allow yourself to recognize you have a choice. So much of what I had observed up until that point, particularly in post-communist Bulgaria, would have been the consequence of reactions, limited fixed solutions, just like that rapid-fire reactivity, poor thinking. And if you imagine how that one space, the gap between event and reaction, could shape the nature of conversations we'd have with each other, the nature of conversations we have with ourselves, like, where's my reaction coming from? What's the meaning of it? How much more dialogue we can engage with that can help us prevent so many absurd conflicts around the world. Like, it's just incredible. But I also love it because, obviously Frankl is the father of logotherapy, which is the psychology of sense-making and how you attribute meaning to different things. How many of us are thinking that you are free to attribute different meaning to experiences? Like, this could be horrendous or this could be awesome. You made Jamie has been experimenting with that, and it's actually frustrating. Do you know what he does? So he does this thing about...
You make Jamie.
But, like stuff that used to trigger him or frustrate him. And in our house, there's usually gazillion other people as well as just our family, but there's a constant chaos and constant mess, and it's just like loud, proper Bulgarian house, right? And poor Jamie is a very tidy individual. So things that used to trigger him, and you could see his grumpy face for months, now he has this instinctive reaction of finding joy in it and smiling, and it's almost psychopathic-like. But he's been practicing with this thing of attributing different meaning to what he might recognize as a common trigger or habitual trigger, and going, this is a bit of a clown moment, isn't it? It's a bit funny. And it catches me all the time because sometimes I'm like, dude, I just want to be angry. I want to be pissed off with you right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. But you can't, because he's got a grin on his face. So
did you introduce that? that concept?
I swear I did, but he dismisses everything I say, and then he goes ahead and finds some sort of, I don't know, human experiment thing. And it's like, I found it there. It's like, no, you can quote me. It's awesome stuff.
What do you do for, I don't know if mindfulness is the right word, but are you meditating? Are you journaling? Are you cold ice bathing? What do you do?
I have dabbled in everything just because as a good scientist, I have to test everything long enough to know if it works for most people. And all of these things do work. But I find like I'm stuck on this thing of I want to be able to have a set of practices that I can pick up and travel with me everywhere. And that just won't stop, because it's just maybe it's the experience of having lived out of a go bag. Like everything you need has to be picked up and taken with you. So I love a particular set of yoga practices that is dynamic, and I can do it in the back of a plane or one of those people, or anywhere. Box breathing is really important to me because, after one of my trips to Afghanistan, I realized I was hazy and dizzy, and it was only because I'd spent months just breathing from my chest as opposed to from my... So a big humble pie moment for me as a practitioner going, dude, you can't even breathe. What are you doing talking to people about how to maintain peak performance? So this, I find practices in mindfulness, dynamic kind of mindfulness, most accessible when there is movement or strain. And that sounds odd, but I've just reacquainted myself with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practice again. I love it. And I find there's nothing better in practicing mindfulness than just being shocked in a present moment, by some, person who has higher belt than you and will know more than you ever will. So just, those moments that give you a buzz that is only yours, essential.
Man, I've got like other stories and things, but I'm aware of the sort of the time we've taken. But Jamie gave us one other story, and I think it kind of speaks to, like, we've been chatting nearly 2 hours and we haven't even mentioned it. But he said, like, there was this incident when you were in no man's land between Israel and Syria, and you were sat in a bunker getting shelled, and there was a massive battle happening around the observation post, and there was just a whole lot going on. But I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I imagine there's just heaps of these things, right? These incidents and these horror stories and these things you've observed when you're on tour. And it's just, I don't know, it's just like part of your story. But like when you're in that bunker, are you using all these resilience toolkits thing? Is that even a big deal to you?
There's a high probability that I lack awareness to appreciate the acuity of risk in those moments. Do you know what I mean? I think we are insanely lucky, or at least my generation of military people in New Zealand. The level of training we have is epic. Do you know what I mean? For situations like this. So in real context, because you feel prepared, you get to problem solve, you get to engage with reality. So for example, the first moment you took me to this memory that Jamie would have shared, my instant memory of that is sitting on top of the observation post and observing the sunset when we had a lull in crossfire, which is weird. Like, Go see the sunset. It's not like we were preparing for our final sunset. There's nothing dramatic about it. You just saw that it was a good thing to observe, and you have ceasefire for a minute, so why not appreciate it? So I don't know if this is military, maybe it is military training, but this particular incident was also very special because, again, when you pay attention, the cues are there that something is going to happen next. But we knew that we couldn't, if we abandoned our post too early, UN would have failed. We had notified in many occasions that the risk is significant for us in this particular area, and response we got quite literally was, it is what it is. I'm like, okay, cheers. So sitting ducks we were. But yeah, it was extraordinary. Without a fail. So here in this particular one that Jamie would know about, it's one thing we did remember. So when we were brought into this mission area, it was already really hot, as in it was, dangerous. And one of the exiting observers was telling us a story about being stuck in that same bloody shelter months prior to that and what not to do. So what not to do was basically him and his mate that was stuck in that same shelter began to catch themselves contemplating how they will be guessed out of there. And they'd seen some sort of story, because we were gathering intelligence supposedly, and we knew that people would be gassed out because it had a metal gate, like, so you don't want to breach through it, but if you put gas under the opening of the door, they'll step out. So they got themselves into this wild spiral. And several months later, when me and my mates were in that same shelter stuck in a similar crossfire, we came to a point where we realized we've provided every bit of observation we can. We can only make sense of that much of the reality from now. And then we had made the wise decision to play on the DVD The Queen. We had a random DVD. Do you notice how these like random moments give you a huge amount of control?
Mm.
We were playing quietly, just so that we can have like something to take our minds off in moments we knew we couldn't do anything about the Queen in a shelter, just because we had to all stay awake,
Yeah.
We had old bread. We were cooking it on a gas cooker. We were just having these like really special moments planned for ourselves to keep the morale high. And then we came back, and the person debriefing me said that I kept the morale too high. Stop it. That's priceless.
Amazing. I won't keep you much longer, but I dropped that in for the listener just to give a bit of an idea of some of the stuff we haven't even covered. But one thing I did want to touch on before we let you get out of here is TV star. Like the different directions that your life has gone, like tracked, like getting approached to be on the show with Vinnie Jones.
Yeah.
Like who could have predicted your sort of career would go that way? Was that an easy decision to go on the show?
No. Very, very hard decision. So twice now TV star, and it's the biggest joke because one of my team, the team that I work with in Venture, we have this rule where we have to do something that frightens us every year. And silly things like bungee jumping off a thing, that's not good enough. It has to be something that professionally challenges you and shows you how kind of fixed your identity may become. So you've got to do something outlandish. And the team approves or disapproves if it's good enough to fit the criteria. This fitted the criteria because I realized I was becoming too conservative. I was taking myself a bit too seriously. And I know nothing of reality TV. But man, the team I work with was incredible. John Wilde, like just the coolest director ever. The team he summoned, maybe it's just my luck. Maybe just humans are generally awesome. We had like 100 people on the team. And it was a buzz for 7 weeks. Like we traveled together, Vinnie Jones included. Yeah. I mean, Vinnie Jones was a satellite dish a lot of the time. Like it was out, away from the peasants,
I did want to zero in on Vinnie Jones because I'm a football fan who grew up in the 80s and 90s, and he like had this hard man persona as a player and then became a movie star in his own right. But do you have a lot of interaction with him? Or you say he's a satellite? Is he like just cruising with his own posse, disconnected from the rest of the crew?
He did at the beginning, and then we forced ourselves on him.
Yeah.
Like smudged our cuiness all over his tough persona. But he's an actual awesome dude.
I bet.
Awesome dude. I think initially, he was accustomed to being treated like a rock star, and we wouldn't have none of that, obviously, because he's in New Zealand. It just softened up so much. And again, imagine being surrounded by people who think they know you all your life. That would just, he was an amazing guy. Actually, proper good heart underneath layers and layers of loudness.
Yeah, right.
Very loud.
Do you get recognised from Tracked fans? Let people come up and say, "Oh, I loved you in Tracked." Is it that?
I mean, I did for a little bit. Yeah, at the beginning. It was at a rugby game for my son. My son hated it.
Yeah.
And that was it,
Yeah.
It's
The UK version, Who Dares Wins. Right?
Yeah.
So after Jamie came on the show, I noticed a lot of comments, and I'm assuming it was from former sort of soldiers or people you work with, and it always said like "Who Dares Wins" or WDW after it.
Yeah.
What's the connection there?
Well, that's the kind of a core principle for the SAS, right? It's on the badge underneath the,
Okay.
Who Dares Wins.
Yeah.
So the first SAS soldiers that were on the back of a truck in Egypt, that was the hoo-ha thing that they were tell to themselves. How awesome is that?
That's so cool.
Who Dares Wins.
Yeah. Right. I am going to bring us on home straight. I know I keep honestly, we could talk to you for hours. Like I've found the whole chat so fascinating and gripping. I guess just looking forward, future. Like, how do you think about the future? Do you have a place you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 1 year? Like what's the dream?
I have this horrible fear the way in which our lives have shaped so far, and by our I mean Jamie and I, it would have been really sad if we had cast our minds 5 years from now, because do you know what I mean? We probably would have had limiting plans. It's been extraordinary, right, so far. So long as that rule hasn't changed, so long as I feel I'm useful and can contribute, the buzz is on. It just is the happiest thing. So the only thing we've promised ourselves, and this is the one thing we do as in together, is adventuring out more and reconnecting a whole heap more with the stuff we love as individuals and together. So climbing, I haven't been on a rock wall for what feels like 1,000 years. I need that back, so that's it. The rest of it is work, wherever work needs me.
And then professionally, are there emails that come into your inboxes and you look at the subject matter or the potential for the subject matter and just go, wow, like let me at that project?
Yeah.
And can you share any of those?
There is one right now. I will not share the location because it's too early, but it is about building resilience, multi-generational scaffolded approach across a culture effectively. And it's some of the world's most interesting and committed. When you have, there's plenty of interesting people, everyone is interesting, but you get that combo between interesting and committed, and you don't know that person, but you can fully trust them and you can just rock on in. They've collected a posse of 24 of these ridiculously awesome humans, all focused on how do we help this generation be free to explore and to contribute and to focus on the most significant outcomes. For this particular cohort, it is environmental impact, sustainability, and ingenuity and innovation, of which we will need abundance, whilst being an averagely good human. So that project is a little scary because it's the kind of thing that's not sucks you in. If you're on the train, I don't think anyone in his right mind would jump off of it.
I've seen this movie. You're one of the 20 people that are going to save the world.
Is that it? No, I mean, when you think about it,
Vinnie Jones.
Yeah. No, if that happens, I'd be,
But are you seeing a trend of more values-based projects and organizations starting to emerge to I won't say combat what we're facing now, but to kind of address some of the issues that we are facing now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just in every organizational context I'm exposed to, even the most traditional ones, even the ones that are pretending to pay lip service to that stuff. It's just there, So, yeah.
I was going to say, that's a big part of it, right, is narrowing the gap between values and behavior. Mm-hmm. And people are becoming more and more observant and calling people out of, no, hang on, you're saying this thing, but you're doing this thing and it's completely different. And then they're voting with their pockets or voting with their feet in terms of not supporting those causes. So narrowing the gap is obviously becoming more and more important.
And that, absolutely right.
Okay, I feel like the logical place to really end it is having a chat about resilience.
Well, you've got a world expert on it. Yes, probably makes sense for us.
So in the reading and the prep for this, I know that perhaps previously or resilience had been defined by bounce back ability, but you have taken it in a different direction. Can you tell us about what that is?
I mean, can I just preface? I need to preface that, and genuinely, I feel like just in my experience in life, I think I did say that before we started, but it literally is the most important thing before the thing that seems most important to most people. Because for any one of us to be committed, to persevere, to allow themselves to overcome obstacles that are inevitable if you're following anything worth following, you require this good stuff called resilience. And I've always hated this whole bouncing back, and it comes together with bouncing back following an untoward event. That's the traditional definition of resilience. And it's just stop, untoward event, according to whom, for how long, against what criteria. And then you got some really physical reminders, in reality, when you apply that stuff, bouncing back is actually pretty awful proposition for a lot of people who experience significant setbacks, because it could be bouncing back to a shitty relationship, following having recovered from a really negative episode. Not a good idea. We know with floods and earthquakes in New Zealand, bouncing back to something that is no longer there, not so smart either. And so the job to be done of resilience, if we nurture it right, is to allow us to learn, to absorb, to do the stuff we are designed for as humans, to grow, to challenge, to question, to make that gap that Frankl spoke about between event and reaction, and choose and create. And magic happens for absolutely everyone when they allow themselves access to it. And it's not, do you know what I mean? It's not magical stuff. I don't want it to sound like it's semantics or anything, God forbid, fluffy, because in our context, it is, you don't step forward without it. In absence of it, decision-making is narrowed. Capacity for building connection is gone, or at least limited to transactional. The outcomes that are produced are inevitably suboptimal. And it's just, having observed as much as I have over the last little while, it feels sinful that we don't speak about it more, that we don't speak about these obvious things that we get to see are absolutely essential for creating the extraordinary. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all know about it, but none of us fully commit to making this stuff work. Yeah.
I've got young kids.
Yay.
Resilience.
Yes.
Building resilience in kids. What do you recommend? What do you do?
So there will probably be like a tribe of child psychologists telling me off for this. I don't think you build that in children. I don't think it's like let me throw some bricks at you. I might come back to my dad's rule, which is get out of the way more often and prevent things from taking away from the innate resilience. We all have it. Do you know what I mean? It's not a thing that you learn, you have it, but more of us are kind of finding obstructions to it and adding the layers that are taking away from what's innately ours. So from what I have observed, a responsibility is, not responsibility, a privilege as parents is to not take away from that resilience with clumsiness, to minimize the risk of any of these dopamine triggering things that our environments are saturated by, to allow that child to experience what it means for them to have a sense of agency, which is not necessarily confidence. It's, I have capacity to influence the outcome of my life. And you know full well how early on in the journey they tell you they need that stuff. The minute they say no, and you're like, you just want to get out of the door and get to work. No, wrong sock or whatever. And it's like, come on, I'm saving the world. What socks? What are you talking about? But I think that's the only thing we have to do is just allow them to be what they're designed to be, which is breathing, living, connecting, challenging entities that are there to design their own access to resilience.
And for adults, there are some really great practical examples in the Resilience Toolkit, right? That we can take away off the shelf and actually start to implement in our everyday lives.
Or listen
Totally.
Listen to the audiobook read by yours truly.
Oh, did you do the narration of the audio?
Yeah, I did. I did. Had some Bulgarianism sneaking there. But it's actually, I was reading it last week, and also I've got a copy of it from one of my students with stickers on it. It is actually proper helpful. And I'm not saying it because I wrote it. It's actually good stuff. Lots of good stuff.
Can't recommend it enough. Go and get the Resilience Toolkit. There's so much goodness in that, just like there has been in this episode. That husband and wife duo is going to take some beating on the podcast. It was such a pleasure. Honestly, I've enjoyed this one so much. So thank you for coming and giving us so much of your time and sharing so much of your story. I've absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I can't echo that sentiment enough. Like when you said the most fascinating couple, I kind of, on the surface, was like, I can, yeah, maybe. Let's see how this goes. But similar to Stephen, like your ability to articulate your thoughts and your knowledge and your experiences in your second language is really takes some beating. But your storytelling really draws in, and the same level of detail that we had from Jamie is evident in your retelling of not only your situation in Syria, but also your ideas and your thoughts around your work and what you do. Captivating listen. I'm so glad that we got you in to complete that amazing duo.
Thank you so much, champions. It's been a real privilege. Thank you.